I'll be traveling from my home in England to visit my mother in America for 10 days, and I wanted to show you how I go about deciding what I want to bring on any given trip. I'm definitely bringing my Sendak, and I'm not bringing the Mini, although I do love that one, but I've reserved my Mini simply for little tiny painting adventures. And whilst I'm away, I'm going to want to be doing more than just that. So I'm going with my larger Sendak. But I've changed some of the things inside for this journey. So I'll very quickly run through this before I talk about some of the other things that I'm bringing. The first thing I'm bringing is my Kaweco Lilliput brass fountain pen. And I made a video a few days ago where I showed how I take a regular cartridge and put waterproof ink inside of it so that I can use it with watercolor and wash paintings. And so far I'm loving it. I'm also bringing my Kaweco Sport, and this one does have water-soluble ink, but I like that because it means that I can do some watercolor and wash paintings where I don't need color, because the color in here is a brown color. When I paint with it, it has a really oldie-worldy vintage look, and so I really like it for that option. Everything that I've researched about traveling with fountain pens in airplanes has suggested that it's pretty safe to do so as long as you store your pens upright whilst you're flying and make sure that when you remove the caps, you do so sort of quickly and raise them up quickly so that the air can get in and there won't be any spillage. This is going to be an experiment, and we'll see whether or not that's true for me or not. What I am going to do just to be safe is I'll take these and I'll put them in plastic and I'll store them elsewhere in my travel bag in an upright position just to be safe. And honestly, I probably won't use them on the plane. And I know some people have suggested just taking the cartridges out altogether, but this cartridge doesn't really self-seal because I filled it with a syringe. So I think I'm going to just risk it, and I'll let you know how that experiment turns out. The next thing I'm bringing is my Graph Gear 500, and I've normally used the 0.5 or even the 0.7, but I found that when I'm doing really tiny paintings, it's difficult to get intricate details with the 0.5. So I've experimented lately with using the 0.3, and I'm really happy with it. So this one is definitely coming. And I am interested in doing some regular sketching, so I'm bringing two of my Staedtler Mars Technico. This one is an HB and this one is a 2B. And if you're not familiar with these, you push the top and the lead comes out, and then you can decide how much of it you want to show. So if I want to do some shading on the side, I can get a really nice feeling just by using the side of the pencil. And this one is the darker lead. This one is lighter. And it will have a lighter point, so it will be more similar to a 0.7 or a 0.9 mechanical pencil. These are pretty clever because they come with these colored tops so that you can look at a glance and see what different leads are in there. Unfortunately, the color ones don't have a pencil sharpener, but this one does. This little point on the end is a built-in lead pointer, which will make the lead very sharp. I do have some art supplies at my mother's house that I leave there, but the problem is I always forget what I have. And then I bring things and I arrive and think, oh, I had a copy of this there. But just to be safe, I'm bringing 4 fine liners, and these are basically my favorite ones at the moment. I have a 0.1 Unipin fine liner. It's fade-proof and waterproof, and I really like this one a lot. This one basically replaces this 005 Prismacolor Premier one. I don't know what's happened to their quality, but it's drastically changed. They don't seem to be the same color, they don't seem to last as long, and they're also really difficult to source these days, even in America. So this is just an old one, and I have it as a backup for the Unipin. I did actually prefer this one. It was slightly darker than the Unipin, and obviously the tip is a little bit more fine. So I'm still looking for the perfect replacement. The Unipin would be great if they made a 005 or a 0.05, but they don't. Not that I can find anyway. And then I'm bringing 2 black fine liners, and I'm using the Prismacolor Premier for these. These are the 005 and the 01, and anything from a postcard size to a tiny painting, these sizes are perfect for me. I find that I really don't need any more because I add the texture with these, and so these two are coming along. The next bit of supplies that's coming along that I also am putting on my probation list is the Molotow Masking Fluid Liquid Pump Marker. This is a brand new one, so I'm curious to see how I get along with it. I used these markers for years and loved them, and I never had any problems with them at all. But for some reason, the last two that I've had aren't performing well in the field. I can get them to work, but not in the traditional way. So a lot of times what I end up doing is shaking them, and if it's not coming out, I'll press on the nib a lot until a bunch of ink comes out, and then I'm basically dabbing it like a paintbrush. And that's not the way they're supposed to be. But I'm just going to hope that those were a bad batch and that this one's going to perform as usual. So again, stay tuned with this one. And then I have two eraser pens. The first is the Pentel Click Eraser 2, and I love this one. It's really durable. It's good for removing masking fluid or anything that a normal vinyl eraser would do. And then the other one that I'm bringing is the Tombow Mono Zero. And this one is the rectangular one. And I don't strictly need to have two, but I do like to use this one. It's a little bit harder of a vinyl than the Pentel, and it's nice to have that versatility. If I do some drawing, as I'm hoping to, this will be really great for picking up some of the graphite and getting some nice highlights. And this one's also really good for removing the masking fluid as well. Next is my academic divider, and this one is shorter than the usual one that I carry. And that one is here. You can see the size difference. And I had a bunch of these that I just kept around for students to use when I was still teaching in person before the pandemic. And I thought it might be more travel size for overseas, but I am worried about this one because of these really sharp tips. I have had them go through TSA security a couple times with no problems. I usually do take it out and check it in my bag, but because I'm always nervous about this, I do have one of these at my mother's house that I just always keep there. And so the question is, am I going to do any kind of drawing on the plane where I'll want to use these? I find these really helpful for bullet journaling too, because I can measure a distance and then I can repeat it several times. So I use these for all sorts of things, or even making a little custom color chart. I could just find the length that I want to use and then I can measure it out. So I do like to have these handy, but I don't know. I'm going to still think about that. I'll put it in there for now, but I have a feeling it's probably not going to come. And this is just a little scrap piece of paper. It's just nice to have a little piece of paper there in case I want to do some swatches while I'm painting. And for my white pen, I'm bringing the Unipin Posca white marker. This one is the 0.7 millimeters. I think they make smaller ones. I need to investigate that because I really would prefer to have a smaller one. But this one is good for if I need to pick up some simple highlights in a painting that I'm doing. And so that one lives right there. And moving to the back row. I do have a longer video about this art wrap if you're interested, and I'll link it up there. And it's pretty new to me, but one thing I'm really enjoying about it is the fact that I can tip this upside down even without anything in the back tier and nothing falls out. None of these supplies are going to fall out at all. And that's fantastic when you're painting outside or plein air painting or any kind of destination painting, because these supplies are expensive and they're also precious. You get attached to your supplies, or at least I do, and you don't want to lose them. So I like the fact that even if this fell off my lap, I wouldn't really have to worry. With my previous pencil wrap, everything kind of jiggled around and I had to make sure it was kept upright all the time. But not the case with this one. And also I can just look to see if every slot is filled to reassure myself that everything is indeed still here. There are 4 pouches behind this front tier. There's a thinner one here, 2 larger ones here, and another thin one on this side. And in this first pouch, I like to keep my aqua brushes. These are the Pentel Aquash brushes, and I love these for destination painting. I very rarely use travel paint brushes if I'm going to be doing a small painting in the field. I will, however, use travel brushes for doing paintings at a hotel or an Airbnb or a cottage or a relative's house or any kind of travel like that. I find them really useful. I have 2 sizes. I have the large and the small. And I find that I do probably 80 to 90% of my painting with the large one. And depending on the scene and how intricate it is, I'll go in at the end and put in the final details with the small one. But these are fantastic. And these are filled right now because I do hope to do some swatching or just some simple mindless kind of painting on the plane. Sometimes I empty them because I know I'm not going to paint on the plane. But I do think I'll take these two as well as my spray mist bottle and just put those in my carry-on with my liquids. And then after I get through security, I can just put them back in the pack. In this next pouch, I have everything that I need for tiny painting. I'll take it all out here so you can see it, and then I'll explain what it is as I put it back in. Basically, all of these items are going to fit into that pouch. I have the little tiny sketchbook, and this was the one that I got from Natsume Handmade. The pages are slightly smaller than the Inkberry sketchbooks that are sold through GoDraw. And as cute as it is, I really just don't like them as much. Here's the GoDraw in comparison. And I'm really excited to finish this one so that I can return to using the Inkberry sketchbooks. And I have about 10 pages left, so I'm looking forward to at least doing one tiny painting while I'm gone, hopefully more than that. But if I set the bar low, then I'm more likely to surpass it, if that makes sense. And then I have the GoDraw palette, and if you've seen any one of my videos before, you probably have seen this. And then that attaches to the sketchbook with a clip. And I use an athletic wristband for cleaning off my brush. Just makes things hands-free and really easy. And then of course a spray mister for wetting my paints and also cleaning my palette. And it's kind of amazing how all of those things fit in this little pouch. And then also when I'm painting, I'll draw. So I have my mechanical pencil here. Here are my aquash brushes, and then I can use any one of these fine liners or fountain pens. And this next pouch also holds a ton of material. I have this little offshoot of cardboard with some long sheets of watercolor paper, and I can cut these up and make tiny paintings out of them, but more than likely, I'm just gonna doodle or play or do some swatching. And it's really low stress and low key. I can just pull this out at any time. It's a nice little playground for me to have some scrap paper handy. So that's what this is. In addition to that, I keep all of these other items in there. Quite a few things to fit into one little pouch. I have this little travel palette from Cass Art. And these are Cass Art professional watercolors, but I suspect that they have a little deal with Daler Rowney and that Daler Rowney makes them. I have no proof to back that up, except that Daler Rowney makes this identical palette, and nobody else really does. It's so cute and slim, and I like the fact that there are all these different colors and that I can play around with a different watercolor brand. And again, like I said, I'm going to visit my mom. She's 85 years old, and we're basically going to be watching a lot of TV and playing with yarn and just relaxing and hanging out. So the type of art that I'll want to do won't require a lot of mental stimulation. I like the idea that I can just do some swatching while we're watching TV, or whilst I'm on the plane, or not. It doesn't take up that much space, so if I don't use it at all, it's no big deal. Then I also have my reading glasses. I usually carry reading glasses with me anyway, but on the off chance that I don't have them with me when I'm out painting or if I've forgotten them, it's nice to know that I always have a tiny little pair right here and they're nice and handy. And then finally, I have a pipette. I very rarely use this, and I would use it just to fill up my aquash brushes and my spray mist bottle, but normally I'll do that just from the tap. But on the off chance that a tap isn't available to me, it is really nice to have this so that I can refill them. And then finally, in this last pouch, I have this little Peg & Awl wooden palette with a leather flap. This is handmade by Peg & Awl in their workshop in Pennsylvania. I love this company so much. Everything that I have from them has been so beautifully made. It's all handmade in America by people who are paid a decent wage. So I don't have to worry that my art supplies are helping to support bad business practices. And it's just lovely. It doesn't hold a lot of colors, and most of the colors in here are the same colors that I have in my tiny palette. So you may be thinking, hey, Leslie, why do you need to bring 2 palettes? Well, because I am going to paint some larger things, possibly, and it's nice to have a slightly larger well for doing so. And I have the Cass Art palette, so I can always use the mixing well there. But again, this is probably a palette that I'll use while I'm in a house with access to things like a white ceramic plate or some recycled jars that I can use for water. So I'm not really worried about it. It's nice that it's so slim. and it's made really to fit into this size pouch. So how could I not put it in there? And that's everything that's in the front except for this little pouch on the side. So let's look at that next. I'm going to take everything out and then I'll tell you what everything is as we load it back up. I remember looking at this pencil case a long time before I actually got it and thinking, gosh, it's a lot of money. I could probably get something similar for less, but I've got to tell you, it's just so exquisitely made, and the quality of the stitching and the thickness of the waxed canvas, it's a bit like denim jeans. It's really durable and you're not worried about it getting ruined or ripped. And one of the things that I thought was this little pouch seemed awfully small. But it's 3.5 inches wide by about 7 and a bit inches long, maybe 8. And I'm surprised at how much stuff it holds effortlessly. Because I don't use my ruler that often, I've decided to just keep it in here instead of one of the pouches because it is a bit taller. So that just lives inside of this pouch. And the next thing are a pair of knitting needles. And I've never had any problems taking knitting needles onto airplanes. And hopefully, knock on wood, I never will. I use these as well as that academic divider a lot with my drawing. I've made a few videos showing how I use them here. If you're really interested in drawing, I do get more into depth with those on some drawing tutorials that I have on my Patreon. But these just tuck in there right next to the ruler. And they're a little bit tricky because they are the full height and the zipper's a little bit shorter. So the way that I get them in there is I put them in at an angle and then I lift the left side and they just tuck in there really nicely. And I don't need to worry about them falling out. Because they are really thin and fiddly, I'm just anxious about losing them. So again, I don't really want to keep those in one of these outer pouches, even though obviously I have room to do so. And next I have these eye teas that I keep in a little bag that I made. And these are great for so many purposes. But for one thing, if I dip it in a little bit of water, I can lift colors because it has this nice point. And also on the back, it's not like a regular cotton bud where it's round. It has these flattened areas on the sides, as well as a hard tip around the edge, and they're just perfect. They're a perfect accompaniment for drawing and painting. And so these just live in the bag, and that will go inside of this pouch as well. And then I have some replacement lead for my main mechanical pencil, and I have some refillable erasers. And these are so great because they take up hardly any space at all in this pouch. So I just put them in and they live over on the edge. And because I very rarely need them, they're out of the way and it's not a big deal. And I'm bringing a little bit of washi tape in case I'm going to paint something that I need to tape down. I don't have a lot with me. Again, I think that's something that I have at my mom's house. So just enough for airplanes or the odd day trip where I think, oh, you know what? I could use some tape. So that again just lives in the bottom of this little pencil case. And I did find a little tin for my kneaded eraser. You might remember that I initially had a plastic one, but it was a little bit too bulky when I put it in this pouch. And this one is perfect. Plus, how cute is that? I love that it's vintage. It began its life as a little wax polish tin, and now it's holding my eraser. And you can see the depth comparison next to that little plastic one. It's a lot shorter. So it fits in here really well and it doesn't poke out at all or have any bumps. So that just goes inside. And I have this teeny tiny aspirin tin. I had to offer up my firstborn child in order to afford to buy this. I'm just kidding. It was expensive, but it's vintage and it was so cute. And I splurged. I thought I'm supporting a good company. So every once in a while you have to do that. And it's just so precious. They laser cut these pieces of paper on the inside. And so you can do little tiny drawings. And I absolutely love how teeny, teeny, teeny tiny it is. So if you want to have a sketching practice with very low pressure, working tiny like this is a great way to do it. And I love that it's so small that it just fits into this pouch and you wouldn't even know it's there. And the last thing I'm bringing is this Art Toolkit Demi palette. I'm going to be talking about Art Toolkit more in an upcoming video. This little Demi one is so cute and I haven't swatched it out yet, but I did play around with lots of different color combinations on different sheets because I wanted to pick some of the colors that I know that I love, but also add some additional colors that are going to really help me depict the landscape that I see. This palette is especially good for a winter landscape. And I was looking at the landscape outside my window as I chose these colors. Even though I'm going to America and the colors are bound to be different in the region that I'll be visiting, it's still winter there too. And so this is going to be relevant. So I'm not sure that I'm actually going to use this to paint, but I definitely want to swatch it and play around with all these new color combinations. These are all Daniel Smith colors in here, and I have some of the Primatech colors as well. There's a tiny painting video that I'll link up here if you want to see the colors that I put in here. And you will be seeing this more in the future. Oh, and in case you're wondering, this is the mixing well over here. And again, it folds up. It's super thin, thinner even than a business card holder. And that fits right in this spot perfectly. And then I can zip everything up and it's nice and thin and holds a wealth of valuable art supplies. I fold mine up like a book, and then in the outside there are 2 deep pockets, and I'll show you what I keep in those. In this first pocket, I just keep a view catcher. I have videos where I talk about the view catcher. It's possibly one of my favorite tools for plein air painting. It has a color isolator so that if I'm having trouble deciding what a color is, I can look at it through that. And this is a mid-gray tone, and there's a second color isolator up here, so it's really handy for that. Doesn't take up too much space, and it fits perfectly in this pocket. And then I just have some shop cloths so that if I am painting on the plane, I can keep my aqua brush clean pretty easily. I do have the athletic wristband, but unless I'm doing a tiny painting, I'll usually just use a paper towel or a shop cloth because they're really absorbent. So that goes in the same pocket with the view catcher. And then on the reverse side, I have this inexpensive sketchbook. You can see it was £1.50. But this one's made by C. White of Brighton, but I think lots of brands make similar ones. I really like the quality of the paper. It's good for drawing, and it also is pretty good for watercolor swatching. I know it's better to watercolor swatch with watercolor paper, but I sometimes like to use just a really thick drawing paper because I'm feeling cheap and lazy. And I can do other doodling or things that I'm not really attached to. I like to have these little inexpensive, unremarkable, thin sketch pads because there's no expectation that I'm going to create anything good in there. And so I'm more willing to practice and be playful or just experiment. And that's the sort of thing that's going to help you grow as an artist, is that experimentation. I also have a couple of postcards that I'm keeping tucked inside. They're roughly the same size. And I think I probably will do my swatching on postcards. I normally don't paint on these postcards. These are also made by C. White of Brighton. I love them for ink drawing, but they're not 100% cotton, so I normally don't do watercolor on them. What I normally do is take them to my printer and have my ink drawings printed with waterproof ink on a better quality of watercolor paper. And that's kind of fun too, because then I can paint multiple versions of the same drawing. So I'm just going to keep these tucked in here. Again, if I'm feeling ambitious, because I do have a really long layover on this flight, I have options. And if not, it's not taking up much space, so it's no big deal. And that's it for the pouch. I like to think of it as a maximalist, minimalist art kit. So I have a ton of stuff in here, but relatively speaking, it's pretty small considering that I've got lots of sketchbooks and paper options in here, and postcards, a couple different watercolor palettes, tons of drawing material. And so this little kit is going to go on the plane with me, and I can just set it up on the tray table and do everything that I need to do. And I can play around. And so here are the other things that I'm bringing. I already mentioned the sketchbook that I made. It has an open binding and lots of different samples of watercolor paper inside. I really don't know what I'm going to paint in here. I would like to give the paper a fair shake. I may do swatching on the side with the writing and use the other side for actual paintings, but I'm not sure. I probably won't use this, full disclosure, but I do want to bring it because I have a feeling if I don't, I'll want it. And so that is coming. I've also mentioned these C. White of Brighton postcards. This is a UK brand. I don't even know if they sell this in the US. I like both their drawing paper and their watercolor paper. It's a more inexpensive paper. A lot of students who are studying art for GCSE or A-level or uni will use their sketchbooks because their paper is pretty durable. So I'm just bringing some extra watercolor postcards. Again, I think I'm going to use these for swatching and not anything else. They don't take up much space, and so those are coming as well. This is the main project that I think I might be working on if I have any amount of time. Every October, I do an ink drawing challenge where I draw every day. I don't do Inktober where I follow any of those prompts. But I like the fact that I know around the world a lot of people are doing Inktober and other kinds of ink challenges. And so it's nice to think of all these people collectively doing art every day. And so that helps me keep going. And last year when I did categories of 4. And so these are the different categories that I have in these little sleeves. So there are 4 postcards in each of these little sleeves, and I have all of these different themes. And I did get these printed by my printer on Bockingford Knot paper, which is pretty decent watercolor paper, and it's well respected by a lot of artists. And I've already painted one of the lighthouses and one of the windmills, but I want to paint one from each of the other categories before I put them on my website so that people understand that they can just be purchased as an ink drawing, but they can also be purchased as watercolor postcards that people can paint. So those will be on my website soon, and I'm really hoping just to have fun, not worry about drawing, and just play around with paint whilst I'm at my mom's. And so these also go on that pile. Speaking of low-key sketchbooks, I have another one of these little pamphlet sketchbooks. I don't even know who made it. Obviously, I took the label off, so I can't tell you, but I like these for ideas. And because I am working on a few illustration projects right now, it's going to be handy for that. And because I have those postcards that I'm hoping to paint, I want to use proper brushes for that. And so I'm bringing a few of these Rosemary travel brushes. Their brushes are the best that I've ever used. So I have these different brushes that I'll be using. I have 2 different round brushes. One is a pointed round in a size 4, and then there's another round brush in a size 6. They have these numbers on the bottom. The 4 is R26, and then this brush is called an eradicator. So you can use it for lifting colors, but you can also get these really bold, bright strokes with it. It's really quite amazing, and I am super excited to try this. I might even use this one for swatching. And then I also have a little cat's tongue. This one is an R6. It makes some really unique brush strokes, and I don't experiment enough with different brushes, so I really want to experiment with this one. This case is made for 3 brushes, but I find that it fits 4 quite comfortably, and it's nice and portable. Speaking of drawing, I have these 3 little brush rests that I bought from Peg and All back when I got my Scout paint box, and they're so lightweight and portable. I barely even feel them in my hand. They're so lightweight, and they're so tiny and sweet that I thought these would be perfect to bring as an accompaniment for the travel brushes. Next, I have this little swatch book made by Blue Star Crafts. And again, the theme of this trip for me is watercolor swatching. So I'm going to use this paper to swatch out some different colors, and I think it would be cute to have with me in the field. I use a limited palette, and so for the most part, I know the mixes that I make, but I also think I kind of get stuck in a rut with the same mixes all the time. And so it will be nice to have a little swatch book handy with me that doesn't take up any space, that I can just keep in my bag when I'm painting. And plus, it just will be really fun to make. And some of the products that I don't know if I'm going to bring, but that I might bring, are these 2 collapsible water pots. If I'm painting at my mother's house, I have jars that I can use for that there. But I would like to do a little bit of cafe painting, and even though I'm probably going to use my aquash brush for that, I might want it. Again, I'm on the fence, but I thought I'd show it to you. So these have little lids and they're collapsible cups. So you fill it up with water. And if I'm someplace where I can't dispose of water, even though all of my colors are non-toxic, I have this little funnel, and I have one of these little flat pack water bottle things. And so I can put the funnel in there and pour my paint water in it, and then I can transport my water out safely. And the nice thing is that it all folds up really well into a nearly flat little surface, and this little funnel nests inside of here. I didn't buy these together, but it does fit in there as if it was made for it. And then I can put the lid on, and that's really easy to take. And then I would have one pot for cleaning the brush and the other for rinsing it. And because I'm not using any of these items on the plane, I'm just going to pack them in with my checked luggage. And so I just have a simple cloth bag that I'm going to use to do that. Everything fits in here snugly, doesn't take up very much space, and I know that all of my extra art supplies are going to be in one area. So between this small bag and the art wrap, I have everything that I'm going to need for 10 days of low stress painting and color swatching. My travel sets always change a little bit depending on what my intentions are, how long I'm going to be gone, where I'm going to be, etc. But for this trip, I'm satisfied that I have what I need without going overboard. And look at how cute everything stacks together. So this one will come with me on the plane, and this one will go in the checked luggage underneath the plane. I would love to know in the comments, what are your must-haves for traveling? Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a beautiful day and happy travels if you're traveling, and happy painting.